The Atlanta Braves have really improved the 2026 roster, except for at shortstop. Is Bo Bichette the answer? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Monday, December 15th. Your source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. Follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. Proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com to get started. A couple things I want to get to from over the weekend. Alex Anthopoulos spoke to MLB Network Radio on Sunday. Had some interesting stuff about looking for a shortstop still, being open to a starting pitcher. Injury update on Sean Murphy. I want to talk about that because you heard this injury update from me in September, but now it's official from Alex Anthopoulos. But before we do that, I want to talk about shortstop because the Braves are in a situation now when you add Mike Yastrzemski to the roster, and he's going to be the strong side of a platoon, so he's going to play against right-handed pitchers, and use your outfield spot and your DH spot some. That means you do not have an avenue to add a big bat in the outfield. The way that everything is set up as of now, technically you could, right? Like you could add a bat with the expectation that guy was going to be DH most of the time, and you were just going to have one extra starting caliber bat on the bench. Because if you add a guy to be predominantly your DH and just rake, then you can't put both Mike Yastrzemski and Jurickson Profar and Michael Harris and Ronald Acuna Jr. all in the lineup at the same time. And you're not going to bench Ronald Acuna Jr. So one of Yastrzemski, Profar, or Harris has to be out any given game. Unless you sit that DH for Yastrzemski. Like, it doesn't make sense to add a big bat for the designated hitter spot. And so the only real way you can upgrade the offense meaningfully right now is through your shortstop position. Again, Mauricio Dubon is penciled in as the guy right now. AA over the weekend said that they're exploring all free agent and trade options for shortstop, right? They are open to whatever they can make work there. They've made it clear they want Hassan Kim back. If they can't get Kim back, if they can't really land anybody, and Dubon has to play shortstop, they're fine with that. They will absolutely, they believe Mauricio Dubon can handle it. Dubon says he's excited about it. He wants to do it. My question is how sustainable offensively is having Mauricio Dubon play every day at shortstop. Okay? In 2023, he hit 278, the 97 WRC plus. It was a 311 WOBA, weighted on base average. From that point on, he dropped in 24 to an 86 WRC plus, and he dropped again last year to an 80 WRC plus. Now that's still better than Nick Allen. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of what Mauricio Dubon's done from an offensive perspective has trended the wrong way for a couple seasons. Again, it's not Nick Allen. Nick Allen was a 53 WRC plus. You're sacrificing a little bit of defense in Dubon because anybody's a downgrade from Nick Allen. Nick Allen was a Gold Glove caliber shortstop. Anybody you get's a downgrade from Nick Allen. But you're making that downgrade to get better offense. You're thinking it's a slight downgrade for more than a slight boost in offense. Again, going from a 53 WRC plus, if what he does last year, an 80, that's probably worth it. Considering that Dubon has graded out positively at shortstop in his career, both on the team's internal metrics, according to AA, and in like StatCast and, DRS and things like that. But my question is, if you can't get Corey Seager, which it really sounds like Corey Seager's not available. They're taking calls, like they're listening, but it really sounds like they don't want to trade Corey Seager. If you can't get Corey Seager, what options do you have to upgrade offense at shortstop? Ha-Seong Kim is, his best years, he's been league average. So right around 100 WRC plus, which you'll take. You'll absolutely take that. But what if you sign Bo Bichette? And hear me out. Let's talk pros and cons of this, because I do think this is a conversation worth having, given the fact that now you are at the point where there is no other meaningful way to upgrade the offense than Bo Bichette. In his career, he has been a very good hitter. His WRC plus for his 7 seasons in Toronto is a 122. Now, that is weighed down a little bit by his difficult 2024. He was dealing with multiple lower body injuries, was not the same guy. He had a 70 WRC plus that year. Every other season of his career, and I'm going to throw out 19 and 20, they were good for him. 120 WRC plus in 2020, 143 in 2019. They were just small samples. 46 games in 2019, 29 games in 2020. But 21, 22, 23, and 25, right? 159 games in 2 seasons and 135 plus games in 2 other seasons. And his WRC plus for those 4 years I'm talking about, 122, 129, 124, 134. He's been very good offensively. He's been arguably one of the best hitters in baseball. Batting average is not a great way to describe a hitter, but in those 4 seasons, batting averages of 298, 290, 225, 311. He has been a very good hitter. Home runs, 29, 24, 20, and 18. He's been, in 2021, he stole 25 bags. He's not that guy right now. I mean, he's had multiple lower body injuries. His speed is not there like it was in 2021. But the point is, offensively, if you're looking for a way to upgrade, the only real option you have is shortstop. And if you can't get Corey Seager, the next best option is Bo Bichette. That high contact profile that he has, and by high contact profile, he has an 18.4% whiff rate. It's 83rd percentile in all of baseball. Just going off his career averages, so kind of, including that rough thing last year, he has a zone contact that is like 4 or 5% better than league average. At like 86.6% is where he is for his career. He was at 89.2% last year. League average is like 82, 83%. Again, whiff rate, career 21.6. Last year was 18%. MLB average is 25. He's a high contact bat. He does have some chase issues. He has gotten better with that. But the thing for Bo Bichette, it's a high contact profile. He doesn't hit for, as he didn't last year, hit for as much power as you would have wanted. He hit the ball plenty hard, 48.8%. It's like an 83rd percentile hard hit rate, but his barrel rate was below average. Some of that was because he was hitting too many ground balls. And when he is hitting balls in the air, he's not necessarily maximizing pulling the ball in the air, which disproportionately you have much better results pulling it than hitting opposite field or even straight up the middle. He wasn't as great at doing that as he perhaps could have been, but he's been a very high contact bat for a very long time. And so he doesn't walk a ton. Below average last year, like 6.5%. But still, you can see how a Bo Bichette bat would fit into an Atlanta Braves offense under Tim Hires, right? You would have a blend of high contact bats, a Hires, a Yastrzemski, Profar, Baldwin. You'd also have guys that can hit for power, like Riley, Acuna, Olsen, Baldwin again. Like, you can see how this could blend and this could work. The other thing signing Bo Bichette could do is give you more than one shortstop option. The concern I have right now about the 2026 Atlanta Braves is if Mauricio Dubon goes down, if he gets hurt, your options for shortstop, it's Vidal Brujan, it's Brett Wisely, and then you have to go look at AAA and see it's like Jim Jarvis, you grabbed him in a trade with the Tigers in July. Maybe you call up a Luke Waddell or a Cal Conley who haven't really shown the ability to hit even really that much in the minors and ask them to plug into the major league roster while also transitioning defensively. Like, you just don't have any good options if Mauricio Dubon gets hurt. And by signing Bo Bichette, he's not a high ceiling bat. He's not a high ceiling glove. He has struggled defensively in just about his whole career. He was one of the worst defenders in baseball last year. But you have more than one guy who can play shortstop. And so if there's an injury, you're still covered at shortstop. You're not covered very well with Bo Bichette, but you're covered. You have more than one option there. And then I think the other thing that it does do if you sign Bo Bichette is it gives you a succession plan at second base. Because as soon as you can find a shortstop who you trust to play every day, maybe it's Ha-Seong Kim, maybe it's somebody else next year. J.P. Crawford's a free agent next year. Maybe you make one of those trades next offseason. Maybe one of the youngsters shoots through the system faster than we're expecting. And you think they can play in 27, right? Maybe it's a John Gill. Maybe it's an Alex Lodice, the Florida State kid who has a full year in the minors. Maybe it's Cody Miller, right? Maybe one of those two shortstops I just mentioned, Luke Waddell or Cal Conley. Maybe they all of a sudden break out offensively at age 26 or 27. Maybe Jim Jarvis, the changes he made in the Arizona Fall League, maybe they're legit. And maybe he breaks out as a guy who can cover shortstop. He played it in college. Maybe he can do it here. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm saying it's possible. And so when that happens, when you feel like you have a guy who is ready to play shortstop, you can move Bo Bichette off the position and put him at second base. Ozzie Albies has this year and one more year of team control. I'm not saying get rid of Ozzie Albies early, but I'm saying the decision on whether or not to extend Ozzie Albies, because he's arguably going to want a new contract, the decision will be not based off of positional need, but it'll be based off of Ozzie's performance. If Ozzie has a career resurgence and starts hitting like the back of his baseball card, to use the cliched phrase, you might be able to go ahead and give him another 1 year or so and leave Bichette on short, especially if Bichette improves at shortstop when he's no longer playing on turf for part of the year like he was in Toronto. Maybe he looks a little better. Maybe he works with Atlanta's coaching staff and gets better defensively. Who knows? So it gives you a succession plan at second if Ozzie doesn't come back and you find a shortstop. And there is the possibility that Bichette gets a little bit better. We'll see what happens. But at the same time, there are some very clear arguments to not sign Bo Bichette, to the point where it almost does, it almost confounds the mind that you would consider it. Let's talk about the reasons to not sign him next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. Let's talk about Bo Bichette, right? I just talked about some reasons why it makes sense to sign him. The high contact bat, the fact that it gives you multiple guys who can play shortstop, having a succession plan at second base. I didn't mention it, but it also gives you, if you have another shortstop that you like and Austin Riley gets hurt, it gives you the ability to have somebody else to plug in, and you could do third and short. Like you can cover multiple positions, right? But there's a couple reasons to stay away from Bo Bichette. And I think the first one, and I've talked about this a couple times before, is about the possibility that the deal does not age well. The crowdsourced contract to sign Bo Bichette, and this is according to John Becker of Fangraphs. He has a Google Doc out there where he combined a bunch of professional projections. The projected contract for Bo Bichette is 7 years and $203 million. It takes him from age 28 through his age 35 season. It's like $29 million a year. So you're breaking that Atlanta max of 22. But you're locked into a long-term deal with a guy that does have concerns that his profile might not age well. He's about to move off of shortstop to a less premium defensive position. There are a few rumors out there that there are some teams looking at him this winter as a second baseman. It's one thing to pay a shortstop $29 million a year. Right now, Francisco Lindor makes more than that. Corey Seager makes more than that. Mookie Betts makes more than that. That's it. Bo Bichette would be the fourth highest paid shortstop in baseball if that contract is what he gets, that $29 million a year. But at second base, your highest paid second baseman is Xander Bogaerts at $25 million. 25.45, I'm sorry. And he was signed to be a shortstop. Your highest paid pure second baseman, Jose Altuve and Marcus Semien. And the Marcus Semien deal at $25 million a year just got dumped by Texas onto New York because his offense has already slipped to below league average. He's 35 years old. He's the age you'd have Bichette signed through. And Marcus Semien had more of a history of, one, providing defense, and two, hitting for power. 2021, he hit 45 home runs. 45 home runs in Toronto that season before he signed with Texas. And so, not only could the contract not age well from a dollar amount perspective, but Bichette might not age well. Again, he's a high contact bat, which you like, but he's not hitting for a ton of power, doesn't get a ton of barrels. He does chase a lot. 35% chase rate is 12th percentile last year. He doesn't walk a lot. He's not whiffing a lot. He's just making suboptimal contact out of the zone. If his in-zone contact rate slips a little bit, Bo Bichette all of a sudden becomes a liability. He's kind of like a smaller version of Luis Ariz. He's not hitting for a ton of power. He's not giving you defensive value. He's not giving you base running value. Virtually the entire profile for Bo Bichette is built off of making making a lot of contact. And in his case, he's still getting some slug out of it. What if that goes away? Again, no defensive value, no base running value. He's not really hitting for a ton of power. It's just a high rate of contact and enough hard hit balls to collect doubles and things like that. And he had 18 home runs last year. He probably would have finished with 20 if not for the injury late in the year. If that contact rate slips, you really have a bad contract on your hands. The comparison that I've made a couple different times this offseason in talking about this is Tim Anderson. Because Tim Anderson went from being a batting champ to virtually out of the league. And he's 32 right now? And he's practically out of the league. In 2019, he hit .335 for the White Sox. It was a full season. He played 123 games. But he slipped and slipped and slipped. By 21 and 22, both those years, he was hitting over 300. Right? 118 OPS plus in 21. 109 OPS in 2022. 2023, 123 games, he hit 245. It was a 62 OPS plus. 24 with Miami, 65 games, an OPS plus of 30. Hit 214. 2025, 31 games with the Angels, OPS plus of 41. Both those years, the actual OPS started with a 4. He became Nick Allen, except he also wasn't giving you good defense. And Tim Anderson was released by the Angels in May. The year before, he was released by the Marlins in July. He didn't make it through the month of May with the Angels. Is that the kind of guy you like? Is that the profile you want to give $29 million a year to? Because again, Bo Bichette is better than Tim Anderson, but there are a lot of similarities in these profiles. And Tim Anderson was a really good hitter, contact and all of that, lower base of power. I think that's the big difference here. His max is 20 home runs in a season back in 2018. But they're very similar hitters. And right around the age of 2022, Tim Anderson started to deal with injuries. That was the last year his OPS plus was not only over 100, that's the last year it was over 60. Yeah, it was over 60. He had a 62 in 23. All I'm saying is 7 years of that profile is a little bit scary. It is a risk, and you have to figure out how will that risk. You also have to deal with the fact that when you sign him, he is a poor defender at shortstop. Again, we talked about this in the last segment. He's not good. Does getting him off of turf help a little bit? I don't know. A lot of his negative grading defensively comes down to range. How much of that was a function of playing on turf, where you can run faster, but the ball is faster? How much of that was a function of repeated low body injuries just messing with his ability to get to balls? How much of that was bad positioning? Because you could see if he was healthy, you could see the range of his ability to get to balls improving a little bit. If it's positioning, you can see the Braves getting him better in that area. If it's the turf, you could see all of that being a little bit better away from Toronto. Unfortunately, I have not found a good source that breaks down defensive errors by home or away. If you know of one like that, send it my way. I'd really love to dig into this some more. I've looked at a bunch of fielding advanced stats, and I haven't really been able to find it. I was able to look and see, where are his errors? I was able to do that and see, 9 of his errors on the year, and he had 12. 9 of them were on the road. So was that, were those balls just getting past him and he didn't have a chance to make a play at home, and that's why he couldn't make an error? Remember, to make an error, usually you have to get to the ball. If you get to the ball and touch it, but don't make the play, they sometimes rule that an error. So 9 of his 12 errors being on the road, is that a function of the ball was slower on turf and he got there but couldn't make the play? I don't know. It's such a small sample size. And again, if you find a source that breaks down defensive errors by home or away, or just defensive ratings by home and away, let me know. I've been looking for it. But you do have to accept the fact that you have some pitchers on staff who are good at getting ground balls. And to bring in not only a below average defender, again, one of the worst defenders in baseball at any position, means that you are sacrificing infield defense for offense. How much of that sacrifice is acceptable? Going from Allen to Dubon is clearly something they were willing to do. Going from Allen to Kim is clearly something they were willing to do. And we have reason to believe that when Ha-Seong Kim is healthy, he'll be back to a positive defender. Are they willing to swing entirely the other way? Going from a guy that's all glove, no bat, to going to a guy that you could argue in Bichette is all bat, no glove. But I think the biggest argument against signing Bo Bichette that we have to work out is he got a qualifying offer. And so for the Braves to sign Bo Bichette, not only are you giving him that long deal, again, the crowdsourced contract, thanks to John Becker of Fangraphs, who shared his spreadsheet with me, 7 years at $29 million a year. But Because he declined a qualifying offer, you're also sacrificing the number 26 overall pick, which is projected to be worth about $3.5 million in the draft. You already had to deal with the loss of moving from where, you could have been picked number 6, moving back to 9 with the lottery results. You could also then lose your next highest pick completely and the money along with it if you sign Bo Bichette. It could be argued that is preferable to not having shortstop figured out. Again, your worst case scenario this year is Mauricio Dubon gets hurt and you don't have a shortstop. You have to panic make a trade for somebody, some below average veteran who just is there to be a above average glove with no bat. And you downgraded from Nick Allen for no reason, right? To bring in an Isaiah Kiner-Falefa or something like that, just to play shortstop defense for a year. That's the worst case scenario. Signing Bo Bichette takes care of that, but you lose that future asset. And the value of a first round pick, even in the late, even in the back of the first round, to MLB organizations, the cost of, the value of that prospect is measured in $10, $12 million. It's a very valuable pick in the first round. So that's probably the biggest con for me, even more so than the contract, is losing that pick and the potential of what that could be. And so you have to have done a lot of advanced work on the draft class already. Do you feel comfortable that you can still get what you need out of the draft class if you lose a first round pick? And I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think that would be the highest ever pick sacrificed for a qualifying offer player. I'm not 100% convinced on that. I am pretty sure, I'm not 100%, but I'm 95% that would be the highest pick ever sacrificed in that situation. Is Bo Bichette worth it? Offensively, you could argue yes. Offensively in 2026, you can argue yes. Is he worth it in 2032? Defensively, is he worth it in 2027? We don't know. But if you want to upgrade at shortstop and you want to find a source of offense to add into this lineup, your only real options are a trade, Corey Seager, maybe somebody surprising like a Zach Neto or something, and that's all speculation. I don't have anything that says the Angels are trying to trade him. We talked about a bunch of names, by the way, on the Friday live show. Bunch of questions in the comments. Would this guy be available? And we kind of talked through why or why not would you make that guy available? Zach Neto's one of those, it doesn't make sense to trade him. Maybe they do, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it. Anyway, outside of making a surprising trade, your only real option to upgrade the offense is Bo Bichette. That's it. Again, you can incrementally get better with a guy like a Ha-Sung Kim, but that's not the offensive addition we're looking for. Let's see what Atlanta does. I'm really curious to find out. In just a minute, let's talk about some injury updates. Alex Anthopoulos had a somewhat surprising one for a lot of people on Sean Murphy. Not surprising for Braves Today listeners and readers. We all knew this. As well as some talk about James Karinchak, the reliever Atlanta picked up on a minor league deal last week. We'll do both of those next right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. Quick side note, the Falcons are favored by a point and 1.5 points on the road in Arizona next Sunday afternoon. And I don't know what to think about this Falcons team. Kyle Pitts was great on Thursday night. They almost lost that game. But it's obviously a lost season. Raheem needs to get fired. I don't really care at this point. But that just feels odd. Anyway, if you have ideas about the playoff, now that the playoff picture is starting to take shape, FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Okay, so there was a whole interview that Alex Anthopoulos gave on MLB Network Radio on Sunday morning. And at Choppin' Bravos on social media was listening and wrote up a bunch of notes here. And, go check it out. A lot of good notes there. But one of the big things that stood out is Alex Anthopoulos expects Sean Murphy to miss some time early in the year. And, I do my best at times to avoid tooting my own horn on this show because that's a vanity thing, right? But back in September, after Sean Murphy was announced to have that surgery, remember, it was a hip labral tear, torn labrum in his hip. And the team's not official, Mark Bowman's report on this kind of explained that the expectation is that he would be available with few to no restrictions for spring training. Surgery in mid-September, and they report the spring training 5 months later. And the word going around was he would have little to no restrictions. And it felt a little early to me. So I talked to the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York City and Dr. Benedict Nowachku. I think I'm saying that right. He's an orthopedic surgeon. He specializes in hips and shoulders, right? Those rotational joints. Hips, shoulders, I think knees too. And he is a hip specialist. He also has previously been the team physician for the Chicago White Sox, and he has specifically dealt with hip labral tears in baseball players. He's not examined Sean Murphy, but we did a whole thing. I wrote the whole thing up over at BravesToday.com. I did a podcast on it as well. I'll try to link it in the show notes if I can remember. But the timeline that he gave me for a catcher to return to play was 6 to 8 months. And if you hit the early part of that, if you hit the 6 months, that's mid-March. So you're just weeks away from, 2 weeks away, week away from the start of the regular season. But if you're closer to the 8 months, which Dr. Benedict, I'm going to call it that because I can't say the last name, Dr. Benedict said there's additional challenges when you're a catcher. Clearly, the squatting, the deep squatting position places, there's a lot of demand on that thing that was just repaired. And he said, I'm going to read the quote here, quote, while most athletes can return to play in a 6 to 8 month window, catchers may require a more cautious approach to ensure their hip can tolerate repetitive squatting, blocking, and quick transitions out of the crouch. The core rehab timeline is similar, but the position-specific demands can extend the final return to play progression. It's entirely possible Sean Murphy's ready for the start of the opening of the regular season. But Alex is saying now in mid-December, he's expected to miss some time. And they're going to do something where it's Baldwin's behind the plate most of the time during that stretch. Baldwin's probably going to start 5 or 6 games a week in that stretch. Profar's probably going to be DH. Yaz will be in left. If you sign another shortstop, then you can platoon Yastrzemski and Dubon in left field. Dubon hits lefties really well. Yaz hits righties really well. You can platoon the two in left field if you sign a shortstop, Bichette or Kim or whoever else. If you don't, you probably are platooning Yastrzemski and White in left simply because Yastrzemski's terrible against lefties. I said that wrong last week and had 5 comments about it on the show or on the YouTube. But Yastrzemski's not good against lefties. The rare day that Drake Baldwin is not behind the plate, if he has the energy, they can DH him, and Profar can be in the outfield. And if not, you're still gonna have Profar DH. It's not a great situation. And again, the news is kind of breaking now. We talked about this in September that this was a possibility. Now, in the organization right now, you do have quite a few catchers. I don't think you want any of them playing more than a backup role, right? In AAA, you have Chadwick Tromp. You did bring him back in November. You have Adam Zabrowski. The Stripers online roster also does list Sandy Leone as having come back. Jair Camargo, Archer Brookman, who I admittedly have never heard of until I think today, just now. And so, like, you have options. You have guys, Trump, Leone have done it at the major league level. You have guys that you can use 1 day a week, something like that, for a couple weeks. If Baldwin has to miss time or Murphy doesn't make it back, you don't really have anybody that's worth starting. And so, like, that's why I think it's pretty clear you're not going to move Sean Murphy this offseason. He's not even going to be ready for opening day. He just came off a poor season. You would be moving him at the absolute bottom of his value. And he's being paid like one of the better catchers in baseball. And when he's fully healthy, we have every reason to think he can get back there. The first half of some of these seasons, before the accumulated wear and tear on the hip in that season started being a problem, he was not terrible, right? He struggles a lot in the second half as the hip progressively gets worse throughout the season. 2024, you look, it was a rough year for him, but even then, he was better in the first half of the year than in the second. First half, he had a 653 OPS, second half was a 620. 2023 was an all-star type season for Sean Murphy. First half, he hit 306, had a 999 OPS with 17 home runs in 67 games. Second half, 585 OPS. He played 41 games. He hit 159 with an on-base higher than his slug. He said after the season, the heat was bothering him a little bit. He was nicked up. He also was dealing with a torn labrum in his hip. So it feels like if he does fully get this healthy and is given the time he needs to rehab it, he could come back offensively as a much better hitter than he's shown us in recent seasons. Another guy who can hopefully come back as a much better hitter than much better pitcher than he's shown recently is James Karinchak. Braves signed him to a minor league deal last week. He was one of the better relievers for Cleveland, who has had a lot of really good relievers in the last couple years. But he hasn't pitched in the majors since September of 2023. In 174 games through 2023, 3.10 ERA, 253 strikeouts in 165 and 2/3 innings. Strikeout rate of like 36%. In that 2023 season, pitching the 8th inning in front of Emmanuel Clase, who will probably never see a baseball field again once it's on TV and from prison, 2.08 ERA, 38% strikeout rate. But he dealt with a teres muscle strain, a lot of shoulder issues, did not pitch like at all in 24 in the majors, was released by Cleveland late, signed a minor league deal with the White Sox, and got cut from their AAA roster in June 2025. When he was on, he was sitting like 95, touching 99, very good fastball, induced vertical break of almost 21 inches. Remember, like 16, 17's league average, and like 19 to 20's elite. He was like 21. And they had an amazing 12-6 curveball along with it that had a whiff rate close to 50% when he was on. Last year in AAA for the White Sox, he was averaging below 93 and barely only touching 95. And the curveball's whiff rate went from 50% against major leaguers to 33% against minor leaguers. So they cut him. He spent the winter in a pitching lab. I have a whole article about it today over at bravestoday.com. That's today's newsletter, is talking about that. And they just like rebuilt his delivery. And right now, the most recent bullpen he threw, or whatever it was, first one of the offseason, whatever it was, averaging 95 again. He looks like he could be back. Now, he has more work to do, clearly. He has to do it in lives. He's got to face major league hitters. He's got to do it on back-to-back days. But if he is 90%, 85% of the dude that we saw in 2022 and 2023, that's a really good reliever. And he's on a minor league deal. He's making almost nothing and has control for 2027 as well. So, like, this right here, grabbing this dude on a minor league deal, this is why you see so many teams, Braves, Dodgers, everybody, grab guys who have been good in the past and struggled. This is why they do it. AA talked about this before the winter meetings. Or maybe it was at the time that we did the acquisition for Dubon and anyway, when he in Iglesias, we talked about it. He said every now and then one of these guys turns into Dylan Lee. Reminder, Dylan Lee was waived out of spring training by the Marlins. And he's expected to be our 7th inning guy this year, our top lefty in the pen. So you grab guys like James Karinchak. You grab guys with stuff like Ryan Rollison and see if you can make it work. Because if one of them hits, it makes grabbing all of those other guys worth it. Now, we saw the lesson you learned in 2025. You can't build the whole plane out of nothing but guys you grab on minor league deals. And we saw Atlanta re-signed Iglesias and got Robert Suarez. But if this works, and there's reason to think that James Karinchak may finally be over all of his injuries, if this works, you may have just added a very, very good reliever for virtually the league minimum and have him for one more season after this. We'll see what they do. This has been Braves Today for Monday, December 15th. Do me a favor. You're listening on audio. 5-star review would be fantastic. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when we drop the next episode. Go live, drop a short, all that good stuff. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.